About 56 millennia ago, Europe wasn't a quilt of nations or citadels. It was a broken realm of ice. The last great glaciation was closing in on its zenith. 2-mile-thick ice domes smothered the north, yet the lost peninsula of Doggerland still jutted above the waves. Farther south, the glaciers yielded to wind-swept steppe tundra. Treeless plains scoured by 60-kilometer-per-hour gales where even midsummer rarely crept past freezing. Winters plunged to minus 20 degrees Celsius and lower. Snow was the main form of precipitation, and rivers locked solid. Across those vast distances, trees were scarce. The landscape's palette, white, gray, brown, was the palette of survival. Megafauna fit the mold. Woolly mammoth, reindeer, cave lion, steppe bison, each wrapped in dense hide and heavy muscle, designed to outrun hunger and endure cold. Humans followed the same rule book. People had already occupied this ground for ages. Neanderthals had roamed Europe for at least 300,000 years, masters of chill survival. Broad, strong, cave-dwelling hunters who knew every gully and ridge. Yet a second human now trod the snow. Outsiders from lands the Neanderthals had never seen. Their coming leaves a quiet crease in the archaeological record. Unfamiliar tools, fresh settlement patterns, subtly different bones. The earliest finds date to roughly 56,800 years ago, first in southern France and soon across the continent. We label them European early modern humans, or Cro-Magnons, named after the limestone shelter where their remains surfaced in 1868. Under thick Ice Age sediment, their skeletons lay beside stone blades, beads, and other traces of a vanished world. At first glance, they looked just like us. Early scholars struggled to slot them in any category. Yet inside their anatomy, and inside the frozen earth, lay a vital truth. They weren't native. They had arrived, and on a continent that could barely sustain one apex predator, their presence framed a silent question. What happens when two top-tier humans share the same hunting grounds? The answer would emerge slowly, but the evidence hints that the Pleistocene had just acquired its most formidable resident. Bodies built for extremes fossils, dated between approximately 43,000 and 36,000 years old, reveal Cro-Magnons unlike any other early Homo sapiens. Not merely in toolkits or artwork, but down in the bone. These were no fragile survivors eking by. They were powerhouses. Average males stood around 1.75 meters, modern by today's standards, with outliers reaching 1.88 to 1.91 meters. They towered over Neanderthals, who averaged approximately 1.65 meters. Even Cro-Magnon women were tall for their era, about 1.63 meters, comparable to many present-day populations. But height was only chapter 1. Their long bones were thick, broad, and heavy. Signs of extreme robustness. Collarbones stretched beyond 19 centimeters, roughly a quarter longer than ours, granting huge leverage for spear thrusts, close quarters grappling, and relentless labor. Limb proportions, especially femur and humerus, tell of bodies engineered for endurance hunts that could last days. Biomechanical estimates suggest a Cro-Magnon man of equal height to a modern male would weigh about 20% more, much of it lean muscle. Their skeletons bristle with oversized muscle attachments, anatomical anchor points for raw strength. Think modern strongman, not modern office worker. This physique wasn't a genetic fluke. It was adaptation forged by necessity. In an Ice Age arena, cleverness had to be backed by force. Ideas were useless if you couldn't bleed them into reality. Bones were stressed by cold, joints by constant load. Meat came on the hoof in the form of mammoth, bison, and reindeer, massive prizes that fought back. Injuries were routine, healing meant slogging on through pain, and life expectancy rarely topped 40. Yet the fossils display spectacular resilience. Fused vertebrae, healed skull cracks, reknitted fractures, testaments to bodies that refused to quit. Early anatomists were so stunned they proposed Cro-Magnons might be a separate species altogether. Decades of comparison finally placed them in our own lineage. Still Homo sapiens, just dialed to maximum. Minds as sharp as their spears, brawn alone would never have tipped the balance. Cro-Magnons packed a technological edge as well. Their culture, archaeologists call the first phase the Aurignacian, running roughly 43,000 to 33,000 years ago, unveiled an arsenal of finely retouched blades, scrapers, burins, and chisels, meant for carving bone, antler, and wood. Later traditions, the Gravettian, Solutrean, Magdalenian, layered new refinements atop the old. Their weapons redefined hunting. Finds from Aubry-Castanet in France to Kostenki in Russia prove the widespread use of spear throwers, atlatls, that fling projectiles with brutal velocity and range. Earliest confirmed examples date to about 30,000 years ago. But biomechanical modeling hints the innovation may trace earlier roots inside Aurignacian communities. The contrast with Neanderthals was stark. Studies published in 2019 showed Neanderthal spears were optimized for thrusting at 2 to 3 meter range, dangerously close to an angry bison. Cro-Magnon ranged weapons struck reliably at 15 to 20 meters, rewriting the risk calculus overnight. Trauma patterns echo the difference. Neanderthal skeletons show injuries like rodeo riders, upper body smash wounds from point-blank hunts, while Cro-Magnons sport a wider scatter of impact sites, consistent with ambush from distance. Stable isotope data from sites such as Dolní Věstonice in today's Czech Republic map their diet: heavy on horse, red deer, bison, mammoth, and occasionally rhinoceros and cave bear. Kill sites at Pavlov or La Côte de Saint-Brelade reveal mass drive tactics. Herds funneled into ravines, then systematically butchered. Analyses of stone tips and adhesive residues show plant resins mixed with ochre or beeswax to haft interchangeable blades. Modular weaponry millennia ahead of its time. In Cro-Magnon hands, a spear wasn't a sharpened stick, it was calibrated engineering. Pressure-flaked points balanced for penetration, weight, and swift rearming. Shadows of violence. The battlefield wasn't only animal. Some of the earliest fingerprints of interhuman violence turn up in Cro-Magnon contexts. Skull fractures, embedded points, deep thoracic wounds carved by stone projectiles. The famous Cro-Magnon 2 cranium bears a lethal blunt force trauma. Gooey cave human bones carry cut marks identical to game butchery, skin peeled, marrow tapped. And Neanderthals sometimes lay on the receiving end. At La Ferracie and Les Pradelles, Neanderthal remains show cut marks eerily like those on reindeer. A rib from Les Rochers de Villeneuve bears a neat puncture, likely a thrown spear, something only Cro-Magnons are known to have wielded. Motives remain buried: territory, revenge, hunger, but the pattern speaks. Conflict was real, lethal, and perhaps not rare. In Somerset's Gough's Cave, later, 14,700-year-old descendants even fashioned skull cups, human crania scraped clean and shaped into bowls. Acts too systematic to dismiss as mere desperation. Beyond muscle, the architects of imagination, Raw strength kept Cro-Magnons alive, but their real superpower pulsed behind the brow ridge. On average, their brain case held about 1,515 cubic centimeters of gray matter, roughly 10% more volume than a modern global mean. Size alone isn't destiny, yet the layout matters. Enlarged frontal lobes for planning, roomy parietal zones for spatial wizardry, and capacious occipitals for visual mapping. Inside that neural engine, strategy, memory, and abstraction meshed like gears. Cognition doesn't fossilize, but creativity does. Europe's archaeological layers read like a gallery opening in slow motion. Orientation, approximately 43,000 to 33,000 BP. Deep in France's Chauvet Cave, ochre and charcoal lions stalk rhinos under torchlight. Lines flow with shading, perspective, even a sense of motion, skills that require rehearsal and imagination. Gravettian and Solutrean, approximately 33,000 to 17,000 BP. Blades get slimmer, pressure flaked like surgical scalpels. Hunters sculpt baked clay Venus figurines, stylized female forms carved from mammoth ivory or limestone. Pocket-sized icons whose meaning scholars still debate. Magdalenian, circa 17,000 to 12,000 BP. Engraved antler harpoons, polychrome bison painted at Lascaux, and personal kit exploding with ornaments. Shell beads, perforated wolf teeth, wristlets of carved bone. These weren't idle hobbies. They were signals. A carved bead equals hours of labor. Burying a child beneath 13,000 ivory beads, as happened at Sung-Heer, Russia, meant dedicating man-days of work to ceremony instead of survival. That points to status, inheritance, maybe myth. Soundtrack of the mammoth steppe art wasn't only visual. From the Danube's Holofels cave comes a wingbone flute more than 40,000 years old. Blow into its 5 finger holes and you get a pentatonic scale, the very backbone of blues, folk, and rock. Music synchronizes group emotion, bonds hunters before a risky drive, soothes infants, or marks rites of passage. In neurological terms, it lights up motor, auditory, and limbic circuits simultaneously, a social glue far stickier than sinew. Engineering the everyday look closer, and culture bleeds into hardware. Microscopic residue on stone points shows resins mixed with beeswax and ochre, the Ice Age equivalent of epoxy. Replaceable blades slot into antler foreshafts. Broken tips pop out. Fresh ones click in. That's modularity, a concept modern engineers worship. With atlatls, they hurled spears at 100 kilometers per hour, turning 20 meters of tundra into a killing zone, while Neanderthals still had to close the gap. Composite tech also cut labor at camp. Borans shaved antler into sewing needles. Tailored hides meant warmer clothes and lighter sleeping kits. Fewer calories burnt, more mobility gained. Innovation cascaded. Better garments allow longer foraging loops, which spread ideas faster, which generate more innovation. It's feedback on ice. A climate plot twist, then the thermostat jumped. Around 13,000 years ago, the last glacial maximum relaxed its grip. Permafrost thawed, birch and pine infiltrated the steppes, and giant fauna followed cooler winds north. Selective pressures flipped. A Herculean frame that conserved heat on the open plain now overheated inside forests and demanded too many calories. Generation by generation, skeletons slimmed. Genomes tell the same story. Mitochondrial haplogroups U and H, common in Cro-Magnon graves, still course through modern Europeans. But the robust gene suite for megamuscle and bounding clavicles fades after 12,000 BCE. Farming peoples arriving from Anatolia and later Yamnaya herders sweeping from the steppe stirred the gene pool further. The result is a mosaic, strands of Ice Age DNA woven into the fabric of Neolithic farmers and Bronze Age riders. Yet culture persisted even as physiques changed. Late Magdalenian camps keep turning up engraved antler batons, intricate spear throwers, and trade items lugged 500 kilometers across river valleys. These post-glacial foragers numbered only a few dozen per band, but their networks spanned continents in embryo. Memory and bone, fire and story. So did Cro-Magnons disappear? Not exactly. They transformed. Their bodies molded to warming woods. Their myths hitchhiked into new tongues. Their ivory beads became heirlooms melted into fresh fashions. Every time a Neolithic potter scratched a zigzag motif or a Bronze Age bard plucked a lyre, an echo of that first flute wafted through the air. Even today, fragments linger in the pronounced jaw of a Sardinian shepherd, the high nasal bridge of a Sami reindeer herder, the spacious rear skull of a Czech sculptor. But the deeper inheritance is cognitive. The compulsion to decorate, to calculate, to dance around a fire and name the constellations overhead. That habit blossomed on frigid nights when mammoths tramped outside the cave mouth. Blood on the snow prehistory often comes to us as mute bone. But in the Upper Paleolithic, the evidence sometimes shouts. Along limestone ledges at Goyet in Belgium, archaeologists found human remains processed exactly like horse and reindeer. Cut marks at tendon attachments, long bones cracked to suck out marrow, jaws skinned clean. Adults and children alike were taken apart with chilling efficiency. And the pattern repeats. At La Pharisee and Les Pradelles in France, Neanderthal bones bear identical butcher's signatures. One rib even holds a tidy puncture made by a thrown spear. Neanderthals, so far as we know, never mastered ranged weapons. Someone else did. Why cross that final line? Survival panic during sudden cold snaps, revenge for a stolen kill, ritual trophies to terrify rivals. We can't be certain. What is clear is that the Ice Age bred a calculus in which bodies, human or otherwise, were resources. Food, tools, symbols. Cannibalism was neither universal nor constant, but it sat on the menu of possibilities. Skulls, too, became artifacts. In Britain's Gough's Cave, 3 cranial bowls were fashioned with symmetrical care, edges beveled, interiors polished. Creating one requires at least 6 deliberate cuts. A method, not a frenzy. Whether the resulting cups held blood, broth, or nothing at all, the act itself speaks of mindset. Humans capable of music and myth were equally capable of turning a face into a vessel. Violence was not random chaos. It was structured. Blows cluster on the skull, the spine, the rib cage. Kill zones chosen by people who knew anatomy. Some deaths were instant, others slow. Cro-Magnon 2's shattered skull shows fatal brain bleeding that would have dragged on for hours. These weren't accidents on the hunt. They were targeted acts in disputes where no chief, priest, or treaty offered mediation. Fading footprints. Enduring echoes. By 11,000 BCE, forests had rolled over the mammoth steppe like a green tide. The mega-built Cro-Magnon body, perfect for sub-zero endurance, now overheated among birch trunks. Selection flipped. Leaner frames lost less water, dodged through trees, needed fewer calories. Robust jaws, broad noses, monumental clavicles melted away generation by generation. Yet the people themselves did not vanish. They blurred. Geneticists can still track Cro-Magnon threads. Mitochondrial lineages, U, H, and others, braided with genes from incoming Anatolian farmers and later Bronze Age riders. No modern European genome is free of those Ice Age signatures, but each carries them as scattered fragments, like flint flakes in tilled soil. Culture flowed even where blood diluted. Late Magdalenian artists daubed ochre on cave walls centuries after the glaciers retreated. Bone flutes migrated south with Mesolithic fissures. Abstract zigzags first scratched on mammoth ivory re-emerged on Neolithic pottery, then on Bronze Age sword hilts. Ideas outlived physiques. In raw demographic terms, Cro-Magnons exploded from a few thousand pioneers to perhaps 70,000 individuals before climates changed. That surge likely swamped remaining Neanderthal pockets and shifted entire ecosystems. More human hunters meant fewer easy prey, faster seed dispersal, different burn patterns on the steppe. They were already rewriting the planet long before agriculture. The mirror test stand in front of a mirror. Tilt your head. The arch of a brow, the line of a cheekbone, the curiosity inside your gaze. Some micro trace of each may descend from those hunters who painted lions in torchlight. But the deeper inheritance is invisible. A brain that trades meat for meaning. A voice that can swap screams for songs. Fingers that can turn a killing spear into a rhythmic drumstick. Cro-Magnons remind us that humanity has never been one thing. We are kindness and cruelty braided tight. We design adhesives and atlatls. We sing lullabies and break skulls. We bury children in beads and sometimes eat our enemies. Civilization didn't create that duality. It merely amplified what the mammoth steppe had already forged. Epilogue and invitation. Their bones lie hidden, their real names long forgotten. Yet every time you whistle a tune, doodle a symbol, or weigh the risk of a stranger on a lonely trail, you tug on a thread that leads back to the ice. Cro-Magnons did not disappear. They became the substrate on which everything later was built, including you. If this trek through deep time sparked new questions about ancestry, ingenuity, or the shadowed corners of our nature, don't stop here. Subscribe for more journeys to the edge of extinction and the roots of identity. Like the video if it shifted how you picture our species. Share it with anyone who has ever stared at the stars and wondered where the story begins. And comment below. Which moment from this saga will stay with you when the screen goes dark? Your clicks and curiosity keep these echoes traveling. Until the next expedition, stay warm, stay wondering, and keep listening to the ice.